Commence primary ignition.
I'm just not the hero type, clearly.
What a piece of junk.
Enterprise, this is the captain.
I got a bad feeling about this.
It's all part of the plan.
Engage.
Welcome back to Podcast 2 for 1. I'm your host, Donovan Thompson, with my co-host,
Daniel Wingfield.
and today is episode 134 of Podcast 2 for 1. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and notification bell. That way, if you're on all future episodes of Podcast 2 for 1, as well as the whole content we have at 2 for 1 Studios, youtube.com/2 for 1 Studios, the best place to consume the content. I can't talk today.
No, you can't.
No, I can't.
Yeah.
It's whatever, you know.
It's fine.
But
We all have a mulligan day, you know.
we all have a day.
Yeah.
Right? We all have a day. If you didn't know, and I bet you didn't, we are sponsored by Kapow Comics, located at 4047 East Hill Avenue in Sherwood, Arkansas. There they have comic books, collectibles, graphic novels, and of course, special guest appearances throughout the year.
Kapow.
Today we're talking Cyberpunk Edgerunners on episode 134, Podcast for 1. And
Hell yeah.
I kind of forgot this was coming out, first of all, and then I saw.
Totally.
I kind of forgot Cyberpunk existed. You know, we covered the
Yes.
a little bit of
Yeah.
the game a year or so ago, leading up to it, back when we did game stuff, and for the Xbox showcase and those kind of things. And then we ended up reviewing Cyberpunk, I believe.
We did.
Last fall after it came out, and the only reason I even bought it was because you were getting so hyped for it, and then I was like, I'm gonna. It started making me hyped for it, right?
Sure. Yeah. It's
And then we
contagious.
yeah, and we took it to church, so to speak. You know, we I think overall we come away from it that like it could be a great game someday. It's fun in a lot of ways. It delivers a lot of things we do like about that kind of stuff. The world's great, the dialogue's great, the story. You know, I never finished it. I don't think you finished it either yet, but it's on the right track, so to speak. And I know now that ever since that time, they've added a lot of updates. I think they're done officially updating the game. I think they're giving us some DLC next spring.
I think there'll be updates. They promised
not
some
for the old
updates to
ones.
some systems. Yeah, no,
Okay.
Everything for it will only be for next gen consoles and PC.
Which is what it should have been from the get-go. They would have been
Indeed.
much better situation if they had just launched it for PC and next gen games,
Indeed.
next gen consoles. But yeah, so I was on IGN. I saw that they would not supporting IGN here because they're a bunch of puds, you know. But I was on there and I saw like, oh, Edgerunners and Studio Trigger. I forgot they were making it. And Studio Trigger is probably my favorite anime studio ever.
Sure.
But they did a few of the Star Wars Visions during the first season, a couple, you know, earlier this year or last year. They've done Gurren Lagann, they've done Kill la Kill, they've done Gridman and Dyna Xenon. And so they're like premier tier anime studio. And so it's like, oh, okay, you know, I think I'm gonna check this out. I got like a 9 or something on IGN, which doesn't mean anything. And yeah, here we are. And I gotta say, bottom level, which makes no sense. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. You know, there's a few things I would have changed at the end, of course.
I know exactly what it is. Yeah, or one it is. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. And a reveal of a character kind of told you what was going to happen. But
Yeah.
Overall though, the animation's fantastic. It was fun being back in that world because you know, at least the anime is not broken. So like, you know that you're not, it's not going to stop playing as you're watching it. Hopefully, you know. And so like, the world's fantastic. I thought seeing the journey of this kid who just wants to make his mom proud, but more so than that, I think that's like the excuse. I think he just wants to feel like he is a somebody in this world. And in this world, being a somebody is someone who has lots of money and power and tech, and you know, someone who augments themselves to a point where they're unrecognizable. And so I think I really enjoyed it, and I had a great time with it.
Yeah, I did too. I like you. I've completely forgot about it coming out, and you know, I had played, and you know, I'd actually been dipping back into Cyberpunk a couple of times within the last few months. Just had kind of an itch, you know, to get back in there to kind of, you know, test the waters again, see if maybe my opinions had changed, or maybe if the game had, you know, been updated enough to sway me. And I enjoyed it, but I think, you know, this anime for me really amplified my interest, I think, even into the cyberpunk world. You know what I mean? I think, for one, I think, it does these really cool thing of like, it includes a lot of the UI from the game in the anime, which is really cool. The scanning, the phone call, and how it looks, and the ringtone is exactly the same in the game. I read someone, a commenter on a forum, said that apparently they got a custom build of the game from CDPR and like went in there and took digital photographs of scenes in the game and then redrew them like exact. So it's like got actual scene. You can visit those literal locations in the game. It's exactly the same, just a different art style. But yeah, I think, it's a tragic anime. It's a very tragic story. It's dealing with a lot of like themes of hopelessness and purpose and meaning. And, I think a big thing for me is I feel like it helped flesh out the cyberpunk world a little bit for me in terms of just, it got me a little more, I was able to understand kind of the tone of this world a bit better. And I think, the story of David and the story of Edgerunners, and we will be spoiling this, by the way, fits perfectly into the game in terms of what the kind of stories that you encounter in that is. But yeah, I don't know. It kind of reignited my interest, even to so much so that last night I started a new character and I'm building him as like a David build.
There you go.
So I've already got the gorilla arms. So I've got the thing, and I also just got the Sandevistan. Now it's not the legendary one that he has. Eventually I'll get that one. But it's like I can slow time and run up and punch people out. And it's like I actually was playing like for a couple minutes before we got on the pod, and there was a group of like 4 enemies that like, kind of a random event kind of thing. And I just got the gorilla arm, so I needed to test them out. And I turned on the Sandevistan, and I just beat them all up, and they were dead before they even shot a bullet. And I was like, I'm fucking David now. All I need is the yellow jacket, and then I'm good to go,
That's awesome.
And I did a Street Kid origin. Sorry, and I did a Street Kid origin because David, obviously a Street Kid. And I did Nomad last time, so it was fun to do a different one.
Yeah, no, I think I did Street Kid my first playthrough and the only playthrough. And I honestly didn't realize that you could get the Sandevastator, I guess, as a mod. That's cool.
It's an OS, so it really is like you can't, with the tricky thing with it, or I guess like the downside of it is like you can't run like cyberware or like you can't do quick hacks or any kind of cyber stuff, Edgerunner I guess the Edgerunner stuff with the Sandevistan, because it takes that the slot that you pick your OS that has like how much cyberware you can install or quick hacks you can use and how much your RAM is and all that. You don't have any RAM. You're just using the Sandevistan now. And right now it's like it slows time by like I think 50%, and like it has like but it only lasts like 8 seconds, and it's like a 30-second cooldown. I know that like once I get the legendary, I like watched a video on this build, and like I know I can get the legendary, and then there's some mods you can get to it so that it's like 80% time slowed down for 18 seconds and a 1 second cooldown.
Wow.
So you could just spam it over and over. You could literally just be Dave, like use it as much as you want and just like take down an army before they can even like, shoot a bullet. It's a really fun way to play it, and it's very different than how I was playing with my last character, who was this like edge runner. Like I would take out a whole group like from behind behind cover with my quick hacks and my stuff. And now I'm like running up and I'm a brawler, man. I just I'm jumping right into the ball, and it's a really fun way to play.
Yeah, I mean the David build, as we're calling it, that to me is how I would typically play a game where I'm just a brawler. I'm a street kid. I'm going to go. I like always coming off like underdog kind of guy, but like someone who like has been in the city for a long time. It's like they know the world, like versus like the nomad, like you said you are, where someone like you're kind of coming from a other place, which kind of makes sense too. Like probably more sense because you are also just like you're coming into this world, so it kind of makes sense in that way, But yeah, no, I mean, just even hearing you talk about it makes me want to go back and start it over again. Especially there's been some massive updates since the game came out, and
Yeah,
it's pretty runnable. Like I from what I understand, it's pretty solid now. And
it is. I've encountered a couple of glitches, but they've mostly just been visual glitches that if you reload, they're gone. And I would say that I know that they've done some minor tweaks to like AI. Even there's like little things now that like if you run through people like in sidewalks, they'll actually have an animation for like getting knocked over or like getting pushed. And like if you do it enough, they'll actually like pull a gun and shoot at you. Like you can piss off the AI just enough to like attack you, which was never possible before. They would just run. It was just anyway. So there's little things like the AI is better, and but I think it is like this show. There is something about this show getting to see. I don't know, having another character in the show, like obviously like you're V and you're with Johnny Silverhand and like you're told about the legends of Night City, like it's kind of this like I feel like this game has a lot of world building, but I feel like a lot of time it is a lot of telling you world building. So you get a lot of world building in the shards, right? Where you read a shard and it's a block of text, or you get a lot of world building in the conversations, especially with Johnny Silverhand, who is like from the past and has all these like old stories and stuff. But I think, Edgerunners for me, it gave me like to have like another person in that world to like and like so I don't know if you noticed, but Edgerunners takes place in 2076, so literally like a year before the game takes place. So It's like it's kind of cool feeling like I'm entering, and I know that I haven't found it yet, but I know that there is like some things they've added to the game in this recent patch that is like connected to the anime. So I think you can like get some special items, and I think there may be like some locations or maybe some characters. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I'm really excited to find that stuff, and it just feels like I know, or I have a deeper connection to the world because I really liked David, and I thought his story was really well told and tragic, but not like I didn't feel like it didn't feel emo necessarily to me. Like there's a couple moments that were a little bit, but I felt like for the most part it felt, I don't know, like not Shakespearean, but like it's like just like it builds this idea of like, well, David is just another story of Night City. He made a name for, he died a legend because of like how he went out kind of thing. And everything he did, taking out an entire army by himself kind of shit. Like that's what makes you a legend of Night City. But he's also like he's one of many. So I feel like, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
This world just gave me a better idea of what I was playing in with the game. And so it just made me want to explore more. It made me want to listen to characters more. It made me want to just continue kind of exploring this, because this tone I feel like is to me, it feels pretty unique. I don't feel like there's a lot of games and worlds that have this kind of dystopian. I mean, I know like Blade Runner, of course, but like, Blade Runner and Cyberpunk have a lot of I believe Cyberpunk was based a lot on Blade Runner, etc.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think, man, this anime really well done. I mean, like, I know Trigger, but like gorgeously animated. My word. And what a world for them to animate. Like the most colorful, like neon, beautiful lighting, contrasty. It's just, it was, it seemed like they were just in like in heaven, just getting to animate in this world.
I agree, and I think, I'm not sure if it was because I played the game first or whatever, but I feel like Cyberpunk is an accessible world to get into versus something like Ghost in the Shell. I've never seen the anime all the way through Ghost in the Shell, but like sometimes there's some things, in a medium or a property that are just a little not tangible in our world. But Cyberpunk feels like I could see almost all the things that happen in Cyberpunk, obviously besides like giant robot arms
the techie,
flipping around.
Yeah, maybe yeah.
But like I can see like being plugged in and talking through like a VR system or talking through someone with like like a comms. And
we're already experimenting with brain implants for
100%
tech stuff, so you could like see a web page just in your vision. You know what I mean? Like what Cyberpunk does. So like we're already seeing like the early parts of just. It's like this thing of like Cyberpunk doesn't feel that far in the future. It's not Star Trek,
right?
Where it's like everyone's fixed their problems. We're a utopian society with magical tech. It's everything's practical, everything's dirty, everything is sucks. It's a very bleak world. It's very capitalistic. I mean, it even has, probably one of the most how it depicts police is very, progressive this day and age. Even they're just all bought off, and they're just another company basically that you can buy and manipulate, and they do what they want. It's just it really is it takes a lot of things that are familiar in our world and just pushes them a little bit in the future. But you're right in a way that by the time it's 2077, I don't think that's 50 years plus. That's not completely realistic that we won't be seeing a lot of this.
No, I agree with you, and I think also just another thing too is that, and I didn't expect this to happen, but it's just nice when it doesn't. Is that they didn't water down the tone and water down the violence and the nudity,
no, oh my god,
and the sex and that kind of stuff, and there's something even kind of seeing. It's almost like watching. I don't watch hentai. I don't think I've ever seen a hentai thing ever. Whatever, honestly. But but there's something about seeing a naked anime girl or a guy, and you're like, oh, it just it kind of hits you a little different because it's not something I'm used to, and it's whoa, that's kind of wild, and I think it's a visceral reaction that I think it's intended, but also again it just kind of expands that world, and just little things I don't know if this is in the game, but the one whatever they're communicating through their mind, it's they're not complete sentences. It's kind of the tech isn't 100% there, and it's kind of they have more childlike talking a little bit, but I don't know if that's in the game or not. But I love those kind of details where it feels it's just that's a whole nother language to basically master to write, that kind of thought, and it's how it's the tech can only get you so far in terms of you're saying this, the tech is probably interpreting 80%, and it's kind of spitting it back to the other person as best as they can, little things like that I really loved, and I just thought again it feels like what you said, that I agree, where this right here is a great way to get you into the world, and it makes you feel yes, that's the sad part of Cyberpunk, the world, is that there's all these people, all these legends, as you say, and it's just one of many, and it's and then when you start to play as V, maybe you are also just one of many. And your goal is to kind of make you not one of many, so it kind of well,
and it's the game, your character V in the game, you're constantly saying things that's just what Night City does to people. It chews you up and spits you out. You're kind of throwing these colloquialisms that's Night City. It fucks you up. There's no way to get ahead in Night City. You're constantly being told that in the game, but to see that in a different medium, and to live that, to see that through David, to see that he just literally had his luck just fucked up for car crash, mom dies, they have this great kind of portrait of how the trauma team works, and how if you're not on premium insurance, they don't give a fuck, you know what I mean, at all. And I think that's just that you've seen that in the game, but to see that in another form, and to see a different character that you care about, that you're not trying to pretend, in V you're inserting yourself into, right? So it's kind of it's an alternate identity for yourself. Dave is just a different character. You're learning the story about him. So to see what Night City does to David, I think it makes it, when I'm V saying that's what Night City does, I'm actually that's right. I know that now. I actually have Dave, you know what I mean? I have direct kind of recall to that is what this city does, and that's kind of gives me fight to keep fighting the that's what I do. Let's go fuck up Arasaka. Those some bitches did to David. You know what I mean? Or
you're
whatever.
right.
And I think go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say I think another thing too is when it comes to building out a franchise, and I know they're always trying to merchandise, or trying to look at live action movies, or trying to look at cartoons and comic books, that kind of stuff. I think there's something inherent, and I think it's because of about doing a cartoon with a game, because the game already is not realistic. Even if it's greatest graphics of all time, it still isn't. It looks like a really high end Pixar movie, or
Right,
whatever.
Right. Yes, it
whatever.
still looks Yes, exactly.
animated. It's animated.
Yes.
And it literally is animated. Like they're literally keyframes of animations, right? So
Yep.
I think like having a cartoon that it is by probably considered the best of all time or one of the best anime studios of all time. Like having a cartoon supplement like the universe
Yes.
and kind of build that out is much stronger than a movie, because you also get to take creative liberties, and when you can get away with it because it's a cartoon. Like we are automatically walk in going like, we can see things differently here, or we can be presented information differently because it's a cartoon versus a live action
Yeah.
movie. And so there's less scrutiny involved. And we're also kind of like more impressed when they kind of get some of the larger, more mature themes across, or visuals.
Yes.
And I think like, unfortunately, I don't know if we're going to get a season 2. I mean, Studio Trigger's super busy, but you never know with Netflix. And also, it's like I feel like CDRP is kind of. I feel like they're still in the game a little bit because they kind of have to be with their promises and stuff. But I just kind of think like once we get Phantom Liberty, they're kind of like, okay, we're going to kind of probably move on to Witcher full time. Like
they've said that they are fully committed to expanding the CDPR or the cyberpunk world. I mean, like,
really,
I think the thing is like, yes, they've already said they're working on new Witcher projects, and everyone, I mean, I want a new Witcher game. Like that sounds great, but I think like the thing yes, they fumbled majorly with the Cyberpunk release, but they are still, I mean, like, for one, you're right to say that, like, it helps because, like, Cyberpunk reached, like, 85,000 concurrent players on Steam this week, and it was rising. Like
the most,
It's being played the most since launch right now. This is, like, at this point, like a 2-year-old game. And that is, for one, just great for them. I'm sure they're seeing a surge in sales, but I think they are still sitting on a gold mine with this. Like
it is.
And that is already the story with this game. I feel like is so many people like, yes, it was horrible at launch, and you played on last gen consoles. It works, but barely. But the people that got to play it in a playable state were like, no, this is a great game. This is a really well-told story, really interesting characters. The combat's fun. Like there's a lot of cool systems. Not everything's perfect. crafting's kind of messy and bloated, and like that there's too much random bullshit to pick up for no reason. There's too many I can't think of the word, the dildos. There's too many dildos, like problems like that. But but at the same time, like it's a giant dense RPG world with quests and missions and upgrades, and like it is a kind of a looter because there's just so much stuff to pick up and upgrade and stuff like that. I think it's a great game, and they can build on this still. There can be Cyberpunk 2078. I'm sure there will be. It may be a few more years off than originally planned because of how the launch went of this one, but I think this IP is like ripe for like just explosion still. You know what I mean? There's nothing else for me that can. I mean, Blade Runner, I guess it does, but at the same time, Blade Runner has its own tone to it that feels very different than me to Cyberpunk. Blade Punk almost feels Shakespeare. Like it almost has this like, I don't know what to say. Like it's a little more poetic maybe than Cyberpunk is, whereas Cyberpunk is more like grungy in your face. And going for those visual reactions, like you said. But
well, I mean, just looking here while you're talking, I mean, it's, I guess since this past April, it's sold 20 million copies.
Yeah, and it's not done.
That's pretty fucking huge. That's big.
Yeah, that's more than a lot of really popular games have ever sold.
Yeah, I mean, typically if you hit like 3 million, you're like considered really good. Like that's a lot.
Yes, and that's the thing. They're going to keep. I mean, I think there's already possibly other Cyberpunk stuff, IP stuff in the works. I'm blanking on it right now, but the new expansion will probably be almost a relaunch for the game. They'll probably put a lot of marketing behind that, and I'm assuming that they've already promised that like the police AI is going to be revamped, and it's actually going to be a little more like GTA, where you can get like bounties and go in police chases and stuff like that, which is cool.
Do you know how long is Phantom Liberty? I'm looking it up right now.
I don't, but if we're basing it on how long the DLCs were for The Witcher, I think 20 to 40 hours is a safe range.
Yeah, but that's like a 20-hour game is a full game.
Exactly. That's like an entire Uncharted game. just as a DLC.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's the length I think of The Last of Us Part 2 is 20 hours. So
yeah, exactly. So like it will be, they will market that as like a complete like
as they should. I mean,
launch.
like
Yeah.
they should re-release the disc.
By
be
that
like,
point, the game will be where it should have been by launch.
right, yeah, exactly. And I think they know that. Like that's the
They
thing
do.
too. Like I know
100%.
they've had some issues with investors, and like I mean I get it. They tried the investors I think sued them, and as they
Yeah,
should have. I mean, they really fucked up a
yeah.
lot.
No, they did.
They blatantly lied to kind of meet some quotas and get some bonuses and
Oh
stuff.
yeah. Oh yeah.
If I remember correctly, but again, give me can you imagine like a game just built for next gen consoles or
Oh
or
yeah.
toward
Well,
or
yeah.
even towards the end of this
Or
cycle
yeah,
of
it's,
next gen
exactly.
consoles,
It's like into this gen console game that's like
where you're pushing it to the max.
Exactly, because that's
Yeah.
honestly when you get the best games mostly out of these consoles. You know what I mean? Like God of War was 2018, within the last 2 years of the PS4 life cycle. You know, like
Yeah.
that feels like even Spider-Man was that same year. So like yeah, like probably the two of the most popular games the PS4 ever had came out in the last 2 years of its life.
Yeah, and here's the thing about entertainment in general, entertainment cycle, whatever, is that everyone loves a comeback story, and if you're
Yeah.
good now, they forget how bad you are in the past.
And CDPR, listen, I do think they are not, they know that they are on the thin ice they are on, and they know if they show up with another game and it is in the half-assed state that this one was, that there is a good chance that like the security of their future as a company comes into question.
100%.
And just like I think these people, like from what we know, like of course there's maybe some higher ups that are running things poorly, but it seems like they really have a lot of passion for their IPs, and they really love the worlds that they're building and the stories that they're telling.
They're making great worlds,
And they put a lot, especially like with The Witcher, they put so much care and attention and gave so much stuff for free out to the player base. You know what I mean? And like I just think like
I remember Matt telling me that he thought
I don't think they're going to fuck up the next step.
this is pre-Cyberpunk, but I remember Matt telling me, I think he said recently that like The Witcher, it's one of the best games of all time. It wasn't his top 10. I think he said it's not anymore, but he said, I remember years ago, like he was like, they're probably the best studio because I just give you free DLC and stuff, like free stuff. And it's like, it's huge DLC.
It is, yeah.
Question, I don't really, I'm not an authority on this. Was The Witcher, it kind of launched also with a few bugs, not as bad as Cyberpunk, but it kind of like, it got better and better as it went too, right?
I wasn't really plugged in to gaming as hardcore in 2015 at the time of that launch. I kind of came to The Witcher late. I mean, the first time I ever heard of The Witcher, everyone was saying it was the best game of all time. So that's kind of the only discourse I've ever heard about it. Is that it's perfect, and the DLCs for it are the best, like the most amazing DLCs that have come out for any game ever.
Yeah. Go for it.
Quickly, I just wanted to go back to the anime quickly and just praise one more thing that I really loved. I really loved that the story focused on the idea of cyber-psychosis, because I think that is such an interesting element to this world. And obviously, like if you've played the game, there's a very long kind of like spanning most of the game quest where you're tracking down cyber psychos or people that have gone into cyber psychosis, and every time like you're tasked with taking them out non-lethally. Like your fixer for those, she always wants them alive, and she's pretty compassionate towards them versus like everyone else in this world, right? But I just think, like there's so many parallels to just like real world mental health. And I think that is kind of the cool thing of like what this show kind of shows, is that it's like, it's not, I mean, yes, the tech is like pushing their physical bodies and thus like their brains and stuff to the limit, but it's also just like the world itself that ends up prompting all the psychosis. Like it's what happens in this world and what the things that happens to these characters and that prompts them to go crazy. And yes, the chrome doesn't help. But I just thought like, Maine, I loved Maine because he was such a tragic thing because I loved him. And then to see him going psycho and like killing people like in their friends, and it's just like, it's heartbreaking, but you feel, and like, then he would come out of it and be like, what happened? And like, he'd I was just like, I just thought that part of the show was so interesting. And I'm really glad that that's what they focused on.
No, I think 100% right. I remember playing a lot of the cyber psychosis stuff in my playthrough, and I was just kind of like, oh, these guys are annoying because they're like kind of OP a little bit.
Yeah, they're tough.
They're tough, and I was like, they're just like, these guys got to fight. But like now, if I play it again, I'm like, I don't know. I kind of hope that there's more information about this character, and I think there is when you beat them. Sometimes, like
You
you might
can
get
read
some
the
information about
shards
them.
usually. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
but I think that it totally makes it more interesting. Of like, man, who was this person before I met them?
Well, in
And
theory, that is V, right? I mean, like V gets installed, with a different program on him. Like he essentially, what's happening with him and Johnny is he's going kind of crazy. Like he's getting split personality disorder. He's
yeah,
being overtaken by a completely different AI that. And losing, he's like, falling out, like not able to control himself, like blacking out and stuff like that. I mean, like the story of V is a version of going into cyber-psychosis in some ways. And so,
no, you're right. Two things. One, my only big complaint with the show, which was not a complaint for many, I guess, was like I just want something cool to happen at the end. And in Studio Trigger, they typically really deliver in that area, and that was it's a personal thing. And when you saw Adam Smasher come in, you're like, oh man, he's in the game, so I don't think Damon's going to make it.
sure.
Which
You want
which
him
is
to
fine.
live. Yeah.
Well, I don't care that he died. I just care that I just wanted like a one final fuck yeah badass thing he could have done. He did some cool stuff, but I wanted something like Studio Trigger next level. It's the only thing I needed to make this show a 10 out of 10 for me. But here's what I would like. I would love it. It's the last thing I'll say is I would love it. They kind of continue the anime, or even comic books, whatever. But like I want a 10 episode season on Johnny Silverhand. You know what I'm
Hell
saying?
yeah.
Like
Hell yeah.
that'd be awesome. Like stuff like that, especially when it really ties into the game, and you can really like that would make the game feel. I don't know. It's just like that's the smart way to do world building like this is to
I agree.
is I think maybe they'll do it in a comic book, but there's something about watching the visuals of it all, and I love like the after images that he did when he's running with the his OS and like everything else, and I was really impressed with it overall. I really loved it,
Yeah.
and it was kind of wild seeing Giancarlo Esposito in there because I was like, that voice sounds like him, but he wasn't in the credits though, and I had to look online. I was like, oh, it is him. Like that man cannot not play a villain. Like he's just typecast out the ass.
He is.
He really is. Anything else you want to say before we tell our listeners how they can write into us?
Go watch it. It's a great show, and I think obviously NSFW, not safe for kids or adult. Lots of gore, lots of sex and nudity, but fantastic show. I highly recommend it.
How can our listeners write into us, Daniel?
Listeners, you can write into bit.ly/241mail. Let us know what you thought of Cyberpunk Edgerunners. Has this reignited your passion or your interest in the game? Maybe you've played it and now this is making you want to go back, or maybe you never played it. Maybe you skipped out, and now watching this, I think one of the coolest parts about this show is it really, like, watching it almost feels like playing it because of all the UI stuff. It, like, when you jump into the game after watching the show, it just feels seamless, and that's really cool. I can't really think of any other IPs that have done it quite like that. To just so much of just what you see is just it's one for one.
It's almost hard to call it an adaptation. I feel like it's probably like one of the best video game adaptations of all time. But it's also like exactly.
Medium. Yeah, I know it's hard to call it an adaptation when it's literally canon. And everything about it, they literally copied from the game. I think, it's cool. Yeah. So bit.ly/2for1mail.
And if you can't enter Bitly, you can always go to us in the comment section below, youtube.com/2for1studios. The best places to consume the content. Man, I can't talk today at all. And of course, we're on the YouTube channel, but we also are on all podcast services, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. If it's out there, we're probably on there. Again, episode 134 Podcast 2for1. We're getting closer and closer to the coveted 150 episodes. I think we're going to have Bruce Hutchinson back on relatively soon. We still have House of the Dragon. We have Rings of Power. And we have now Andor, which is out. And we've got to finish She-Hulk as well. So there's a lot to talk about, as always. And I've seen the first episode of Andor, Daniel. It's pretty good. I was like,
everything I've seen from the promotional stuff, it definitely looks more in the line of the tone that I'd like to see from Star Wars. So
me too. Yeah, it's wild that like Andor Cassian gets so much love from Disney with like a great movie with Rogue One, now a good TV show with him. I don't know if it's great yet, but then like characters like Obi-Wan Kenobi does not get the love.
It seems like I have seen some of the reaction be like, "Wow, Andor's great," and it just makes Kenobi seem so much worse. It really like shows how flawed that show was. Maybe that's why they made Andor come out afterwards. Maybe like they knew if Andor comes out first, like people are gonna be shitting on Kenobi from the onset. But if we do it after, it'll be I don't know.
I think you might be right. Well, Daniel, I'm always happy to talk about Cyberpunk, and hopefully we'll have more to talk about in the future. We might do one day, like if we both beat it, we might be like, hey, let's a final review of Cyberpunk. Like, how do we feel about this? Like maybe when Phantom Liberty comes out or something. So maybe like a year or so.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
When we wrap it all up. Anyway, my name is Donovan Thompson.
I'm Daniel Wingfield.
And we have spoken.